Good afternoon, team. Really appreciate you taking your time off on Saturday and giving us this opportunity to have this conversation. Now, just a show of hands, how many people in this room know about Sterlite? Okay, quite a few. But for the interest of the rest of the audience, I would quickly want to run you through what Sterlite does. Sterlite started its operations in the fiber optic space, where we manufacture the optical fiber. We are amongst the top five optical fiber companies in the world. We have footprint in more than 80 customers across the world, and top 8 out of top 10 telcos, they use our fiber. Other than that, we also have our software business unit and our services business unit. So Sterlite Technologies as such does around $500 million of revenue each year. In the software business unit, we were primarily into building software stack for OSS, BSS, and charging platforms. So all the telcos here in India, plus Southeast Asia, Middle East and Africa, and also some Tier 1 telcos in Europe, they have our software solutions. Now, what was missing is while we have the platform in terms of the OSS BSS and also the fiber optic technologies, the middle of the stack was missing, and that's where PNI came into picture. And as a business unit, we had this business unit formulated as early as August of last year. And quickly we started thinking how we can conceptualize and deliberate on taking all these open technologies to the market. And that's how PODS was formed. And just about me, I'm Palash. I head the product management at Sterlite for this PNI. And I also have my colleague, Param, who's sitting at one corner of this room. And together, this is a very small team which is still ramping up. We have roughly around 50 resources already who are taking over the R&D part. And we are in the process of building pods. Okay. So quickly to introduce about what pods is. Pods is programmable open disaggregated solutions. We are not just building point products. We are actually taking all these open technologies to the market, making it as a programmable solution in access aggregation, transport, radio space. And that over the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about what these solutions are. It's good to do research and development, but at the same time, it should make a lot of relevance to all these telcos, enterprise customers whom we speak to, so that the adoption can be really faster. And that has been the PODS journey since August of last year. So when we talk about programmability, the objective of this PODS is it has to be made in a programmable fashion where the control plane and the data plane delineation happens. So if you look at most of these products and solutions that have been there till date, they have been provided by most of these OEMs who have been there for decades together, 30, 40 years of experience. They have minted billions of dollars. But is that what really the customer and the end consumer really wants? But that is a question which most of these customers were deliberating, and the answer was no. They definitely wanted to move to an ecosystem where the solutions were open, they were made programmable, and at the same time, the forwarding and the data plane, the forwarding plane and the control plane can be delineated. And that's where the SDN NFV function and the virtualization actually got formed. And with open source solutions, that is what we are trying to develop as a part of our pods. We are aligned to many of these open communities, including Open ONF, ORAN, TIP, and also OCP. And I'm going to quickly touch upon how these open communities make relevance to our product portfolio. The solution fundamentally is going to be disaggregated, which means that we have a good ecosystem of partners, more than 30 OEMs as hardware partners already onboarded with Sterlite, with whom we are jointly developing the solution. And we have placed ourselves only in the software space, which means that we are going to take the open community software. We also have developers contributing actively to all these open communities and forums. We take Jira requests, we develop code for the open community, and we are participating actively with a lot of these Tier 1 telcos in these open communities. But at the same time, the hardware platforms are taken from a lot of these OEMs. And that's where we partner with most of the vendors, including Edgecore, Barefoot for the Lumentums, and so on and so forth. The solutions that we are building as an aggregate model is primarily pods. We have 4 pods as of now, but the 5th one is programmable Wi-Fi, which I'm also going to cover. That was conceptualized recently, as late as 2 months ago, and we are going to cover that as well in detail. So just to give a brief overview of what pods are. So as I was saying, the 4 pods are programmable FTTX, programmable WDM, programmable radio, and programmable Wi-Fi. And if you look at all these products and solutions, the hardware architecture is very much similar to the reference designs which most of these open communities prescribe. We are taking that code, we are contributing to that code, and we are curating and developing this code and also testing this out in our SNL network, which is a commercial grade network which we have outsourced the last mile to telcos. So if you are a subscriber of, say, a Vodafone or an Idea, in all probability, some part of the network would be, these telecom operators would have taken the last mile from Sterlite, because we have our own production-ready network, which we have outsourced to many of these telecom operators, and the last mile is provided by Sterlite. And that actually gives us a lot of edge, because this is not really a lab project. We are developing the code, and we are testing this out in a lab-grade environment, in a production-grade environment, and that's how the curation of the code really happens, and this becomes conceptualized to commercial delivery happens much faster. So if you look at the relevance and portfolio where all these pods are going to fit in. So if you look at this particular diagram, it might make sense to a lot of people who have worked in telecom in the past. So this is a traditional transport infrastructure where it has access aggregation, it has transport, and also it has radio. So all of this, and OSS BSS sits on top of it. So what we do here is we will have a software-defined controller, which could be a ONF-based ONOS controller, which we are going to curate and make it production grade, harden it. So if you look at the access and aggregation part of it, so it has been either based on the traditional PON infrastructure, which is a GPON. Some of the networks are moving on to an XGPON. But with programmable FTTX, we are going to completely delineate the control plane and the data plane, which means that if you look at the above 2 components, the ONOS controller and the edge orchestrator, I'm sorry for the visual here, but there are 2 components here, the controller, the ONOS controller and the edge orchestrator. So we are taking the ONOS code and we are developing the controller on top of it. And also the orchestrator, which is primarily based on ONAP or some other open source orchestration. We are going to have the control plane as a part of the controller component, and also we will have third-party VNFs, which can be loaded on top of it as applications. What that means is the forwarding is going to happen on one of those white box hardwares. In this case, it is an Edgecore OLT and partner ONUs. And we are also going to write our own applications. So the beauty is the abstraction layer is created by Sterlite, the controller and the orchestration engine is created by Sterlite. And if you need to port any VNFs, which could be a virtual BNG, or it could be a virtual EPC, or it could be a transport which can carry over the next generation 5G radio. Many of us would have heard about the COMAC architecture, which the open source bodies are talking about. So that can actually ride on this PFTTX infrastructure. Similarly, if you need an IP over DWDM network, you need transponders, you need line systems. And these have been also, again, very monolithic in nature. So that can be replaced with a programmable WDM. When we say programmable, it's not just for the verbiage part of it. We are going to program a lot of these transponder voltage control, the SNR, and all these things using the SDN controller. And that is precisely what we are doing right now in our Sterlite labs. Third part is the programmable Wi-Fi. So this makes a lot of relevance to the retail and the enterprise Wi-Fi segments. where we will have our own developed, in-house developed software-defined controller managing open WRT-based access points. And again, that's again an open WRT riding on top of Linux, and we're having any of those open protocols, either an open config or an MQTT-based protocol. And then finally, the P radio. So if you look at the disaggregation of 5G, this is exactly what we are trying to bring to the table. So by building these 4 pods, what we see is we can quickly commercialize these pods and make it relevant for a lot of telcos and large enterprises who are currently struggling with the vendor locked-in ecosystem, which most of the large OEMs provide. So quickly to talk about the programmable FTTX, we will have the Stratum leaf and spine fabric. Again, this is aligned with the SEBA RD, the reference design. The software components, including the controller orchestrator, the Volta, which is the hardware abstraction layer, which has the service provider and the customer profiles. And you can bring in any of the white boxes. And in this case, we have our white box from HCore. And the applications include virtual OLT, virtual ONU, which ride on the SDN controller. And that's how we are going to develop this PFTTX pods. So we definitely have our compute infrastructure, which can go into a central office, and they are based on OCP compliant hardware. And that's how we create the solution. It will be less than a 10 RU solution, which can be shown as a demo, and we are launching this product in the ONF Connect in October later this year. PWDM, we are working closely with TIP, which is the telecom infra project sponsored by Facebook. Here, again, we are using the ONOS controller and the OLS controller. Both are developed by Sterlite. And the applications like optical telemetry, power management, protection, restoration. So all these ACO, DCO, or the transponder parameters will be managed using the OLS controller and the ONOS controller, both for the transponder and also for the optical line system. The transponders are, again, HCore white box transponder-based solutions. And the beauty is you can replace any transponders with any other white boxes. So as long as they comply to either an open config or open ROADM specifications, these are replaceable depending upon what the customer really wants. And again, we'll have the open line system, which can include ROADMs, inline amplifiers, and that's how you kind of deploy these pods. So we anticipate that this can really replace the WDM and the line systems along with IP/MPLS, because as long as you have the compute and the memory, you can replace an IP/MPLS along with the transport solution. The third is programmable radio. This is again a disaggregated 5G platform with RU, DU, and CU solutions coming in from our partners, which are white box partners. You can superimpose this on a PFTTX, which will give you the leaf and spine fabric aligned to the ONF SEBA. And you can build the controller application. So the controller application is what we are focusing on. We already have the midsection, which includes the SMP, PCRF, and IMS solutions in software. The EPC solution is something that we are currently building on. And again, AAA is something that Sterlite already has. We are building the programmable radio, where we are working on the controller, programmable controller, and SMP is something that we already have. So together with P Wi-Fi and P radio, again, it becomes a very strong proposition for many of the mobile operators, because this gives a trusted and the untrusted Wi-Fi solution with P Wi-Fi and P radio coming in together. So in summary, we just talked about what Sterlite as an organization is and what is the charter of PNI. How pods that we are building is of relevance to large enterprises and telcos. We are building 4 pods, which is the PFTTX, PWDM, the P radio, and the P Wi-Fi solution. And we just did a little bit of double click on each of these pods. So for any questions or any inquiries, I'm around. Param, my colleague, is also around. So we'll be happy to take your questions and introduce ourselves for more discussions. Thank you so much.